Welcome learners to New Sources of Power. This mini lecture corresponds with Lewis Mumford's Techniques and Civilization, pages 112 to 118. The eotechnic phase saw the development of new sources of power, and these new sources of power created a new relationship between humans and the economy. And that relationship can be summed up in one sentence that really it diminished the use of human beings as prime movers. The other thing that the new sources of power did was it separated the production of energy from its application and immediate control. The eotechnic phase is also characterized by an increase in horsepower. This increase in horsepower can be attributed to two improvements on already existing inventions or innovations. One, the introduction of the iron horseshoe, which could be nailed onto the hoof, and the other is the modern form of the harness. The introduction of the iron horseshoe made the horse more efficient and more reliable. More efficient because now the grip of the horse's hooves was improved, and more reliable because now the horse could be used in a wider variety of terrains instead of being limited to grasslands or prairies. That was one drawback of the horse, was that the hoof was easily worn out on rocky soils and rocky terrain, and that wearing out process was accelerated when you added a load, either a human rider or goods being pulled. The modern form of the harness, as you can see from the picture, distributed the load across the front shoulder of the animal instead of at the neck. This increased utility of the horse was an important factor in the diminished use of human beings as the main source of horsepower. Some of the greatest technical process came about in regions that capitalized on the increase in the use of wind and water. The Dutch used the windmill to pump water out of areas of land that were below sea level. This had a big impact on farming because now some of these rich soils that had previously been under water now were able to be farmed. Just to give you an example of a picture of how prominent windmill use was in Holland, even as late as 1836, now this would have been well after the invention of the steam engine, there were 12,000 windmills in existence in Holland. One consequence of these new sources of power was that it helped to create a class of intellectuals who became the cultural, social, or political elite. And the term that Mumford uses for this, and you may remember this as one of the political classes in Russia during the Russian Revolution, but the formation of the intelligentsia. And basically, an intelligentsia is simply a class of intellectuals who form the cultural, political, or social elite. But the result of this was that great works of art were created. Great works of scholarship, science, engineering could be created because there were people who were freed up from the burden of labor. These classes of people had existed in civilizations of the past, but normally the labor of the intelligentsia in civilizations of the past was most often supplanted with the labor of slaves. In the eotechnic phase, the labor of the intelligentsia was supplanted by the machine. And Mumford refers to this as a release of energy, a victory for the human spirit. Some of the assignments for this section, simply in the Deepening Understanding folder, there's an assignment with a downloadable Word document, so you need to download that, answer the questions on the Word document, and then submit it through the assignment module. Pretty simple questions, pretty easy. I believe it's worth 15 points, so get that to your instructor. Also, don't forget to go to the assessments folder as usual and answer the question corresponding with this section. I want to thank you for viewing and listening to this mini lecture on new sources of power. If you have any questions, please contact your instructor.